Hey everyone, it is Havo High here bringing you a special review video on Star Wars The Last Jedi. And I wanted to make this video because I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and some of you guys don't know that, and because most of you guys come to my channel for Dokkan and Dragon Ball content, but I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I was a big fan of this movie. But before I go on, I want to make sure that you guys have seen the movie, so big spoiler alert, this review will have a ton of spoilers. I'm going to go into a long discussion about theories and themes and what to expect for the movie, highs and lows, everything really. I'm going to talk about everything about this movie here, and once again, spoiler alert, do not watch this video unless you have seen the movie or don't care about spoilers. So let's get into it. Let's get into it right away, and let's talk a little bit about really the movie in general real quick. And like I mentioned before, I thought it was a great Star Wars film. Was it a great overall film? There are some issues with it, absolutely, and we'll talk about the highs and lows of this movie. But as a Star Wars film, was fantastic. And I know I've seen some bad reviews, I've seen a lot of good reviews, but in my opinion, as a Star Wars movie, one of the better ones out there. Because if you guys watch this a second, third, I'm going to watch it a second, third, or I've seen a second 2 times already, but third, fourth, fifth times, you're going to get a lot more out of it. The second time I've seen this, the more I got out of this movie. So for those who either was disappointed or said, I don't know too much about this movie, and it's like, it's kind of meh, go watch it again. There is some really good things in here. So let's talk about the overall movie in itself and how it was shot. Gorgeous movie. Rian Johnson, director. The music was incredible. John Williams scores. Overall, everything was great. So the story in itself, let's talk about the themes, the major themes of this movie. And I kind of broke it down into, in a sense, these factors here. The movie in itself, the major themes was about pride. There was a word hubris that was said a few times in the movie. So pride, and that's what hubris is pride. In a sense, self-indulgence, and talking about that legend. So that's another theme about legends and being a legend. Failure is a big theme in this movie. Sacrifice. We hear the word spark, which you can say it's another word for hope, right? So they use the word spark, so that's a big theme in here. Lessons learned. We'll talk about the 3 lessons that Rey learned with Luke. 2 she learned with Luke. The 3rd she learned on her own. And comedy. This movie had a lot of comedy, and in my opinion, overall, it landed great, and some of them of course didn't, and we'll talk about some of the comedy that landed for me, maybe not for you. But the best line, and it was said multiple times in the trailer, and you've seen it in the trailer over and over again, and that's Luke's line, is, "It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go." And I think that is a fantastic line, because this movie is literally not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Even the second time you see it, you kind of go, man, it steers you into one direction, and even though that you know it's coming, you still feel the same way. It's really amazing work that Rian Johnson did. So so this is going to be a video where I'm not going to go kind of chronologically. I'm just going to give you my overall thoughts on certain areas and certain items here. But I am going to start in the beginning of the movie. And the beginning of the movie, of course, starts with the crawl. I don't think any movie franchise does a better job in putting you in the mindset and the space of the universe, the Star Wars universe. And the crawl, a long time ago, far away, and then the music hits, John Williams' score comes in, and then the crawl, you're like, I am in. So this movie started off amazing. The visuals were amazing, and it just uses the nostalgia of, panning down, getting right into the movie, and it starts rocking and rolling. So uh, the reason why I'm starting in the beginning of the film, because I'm just going to go everywhere after this, is everything I talked about in themes, all these things here, basically happens in that first battle. The whole situation with Poe, and then the escape of the Resistance, and with the First Order coming, all that stuff, all these things I talked about here, is is front and center. So I'll quickly go through it. So once it pans down, it begins the whole fight, and once again, it was shot incredibly. It was great, and it felt like we were in a war. It's Star Wars, right? So, but it starts with a little comedy. It starts with pride. So Poe is the the prideful X-wing pilot that says, you know what, give me an X-wing and I'll just start to destroy everything. But it actually starts with comedy as well, with Poe being Poe, Poe Dameron, and General Hux. Is he General or Hux? Yeah, just and Hux, kind of doing a Verizon "Can you hear me now" situation. And it starts with comedy, and I think it was fine because it lent um, uh, the characters were the same as The Force Awakens. So, and I was fine with it, and it began kind of the tone of the movie, that there is going to be some comedy, a little bit lightheartedness in there, but then of course Poe's pride of the space battle and everything. He's destroying everything. It's looking great. His self confidence is huge, but in a sense there is some failure. Leia's trying to wrangle Poe in, and Leia in a sense fails because she couldn't wrangle him in, and they lose a ton of bombers, a ton of resistance fighters, and she tells Poe, really, what Poe's like, well, we're successful. His pride is saying, hey, we did it, but at what cost? Another part of this beginning portion of the movie is sacrifice. The character Paige, which is the sister of, later you'll meet Rose in the movie. She sacrifices herself, and that whole scene was amazing, where she's trying to kick the stairs to make the detonator drop, and it drops down, and the whole thing, it's not gonna go how you think it's gonna go. Well, when that thing dropped and she kind of looks like she misses, but then she grabs it. It's once again, it's this whole beginning scene is laying out what this movie's gonna be. And Poe learned a little lesson of, hey, you know what, I might not just have to go in guns a-blazing, and it's kind of a long lesson for him throughout this movie. And Poe's arc is amazing through all this, and it's not gonna go the way it's gonna go because or actually, well, forgot to talk about the spark. The spark was the dreadnought got blown up, and they escaped. So there was a spark there, but it's not going to go how it's going to go because, of course, the First Order does catch up with them and puts them in a different position when they try to escape again. So it's this whole beginning scene was awesome, and once again, the space battle was shot beautifully. All these major themes were front and center, and it was a great beginning to The Last Jedi. The point where it cuts through, and we finally get to see kind of a lot of people, where it's really, you can kind of say that the war part is the side story, but it really wasn't. The war is Star Wars, and really Luke and Rey, that's kind of a side story, and the Jedi and things of that nature. But of course, since we're Jedi fans and Star Wars fans, the Jedi portion of this is everyone was waiting for that. So let's not cut to this. Let's go right into, you know, Luke in itself. So this is a great poster, by the way, and of course all images are owned by Disney and of course Star Wars. So let's go right into Luke. Like I said, I'm going to jump around. And like I said, I was going to start with the movie, beginning of the movie, but I'm going to jump around here and let's go right into the meats of things. Once again, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Luke Skywalker was, in my opinion, amazing in this movie. Mark Hamill did an incredible job. Even though I've heard and I've seen reviews that, oh, they did a bad thing with Luke, and really what the bad thing is, there are a lot of people who are disappointed, is they killed off Luke. Luke dies. But how I saw it was Luke doesn't die. Luke grew in this movie. Luke went from hermit to joining the Force, right? He really doesn't die. He becomes stronger. He becomes one with the Force, much like his predecessors of Masters, Obi-Wan and Yoda. So once again, if you guys don't understand that, you guys got to remember that both Obi-Wan and Yoda became hermits, right? Obi-Wan had to go protect Luke, of course, but he became a hermit. And yes, he was studying about how to, become a Force ghost with the teachings of Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda. But he, was kind of a shell of himself, right? And he wasn't as bad as Luke with his whole failure thing, and part of the themes that are going on with failing Kylo Ren. But Obi-Wan becomes a hermit. Yoda fails to defeat the Sith, and he becomes a hermit, right? And they both die and they both, Obi-Wan and Yoda, also dies as Force ghosts. So Luke mimics all this. This is all callbacks to episode, the original trilogy in 4, 5, and 6. So I thought this was fantastic. So, and the movie kind of ends with Rey stating to Leia, "Hey, you know what? I think Luke is gone, but I felt something. I felt that Luke, died peacefully and with a purpose." And once again, calling back to his previous masters, with Obi-Wan and Yoda, they all died with, or they all died peacefully and with a purpose. Obi-Wan died peacefully, surrendering to Vader. He was fighting Vader, but he goes, "You know what? Strike me down, and I'll become more powerful." Right? And he surrenders. He puts his lightsaber up, and Vader, kind of, does that little attack there. But he disappears. Right? He becomes that Force ghost, and that sparks the purpose of Luke becoming a Jedi, and sparks Luke's journey in becoming this hero in episode 4. Yoda peacefully dies in his sleep, but after purposely telling Luke that he's not a Jedi until he defeats Vader, which Luke actually does in episode 6. And now here Luke peacefully watches the sunset, reminiscent to the Tatooine, the whole twin suns things, and purposely sparks the new rebellion. And it makes perfect sense. So how Luke goes in this movie is amazing. It's brilliant, and I think a lot of us, if it was simpler, would have said, okay, Luke just comes without doing the whole Force ghost thing, which there was already premise to that. Kylo Ren was talking to Rey, saying that you couldn't do this. You die if you're projecting yourself like this. And Luke did this in a tremendous level, right? He faked out everybody, even the audience, right? Faked out the audience, faked out everybody else. And maybe not Leia. I think Leia knew about Luke and his projection there, because there was instances when he the differences between what he was on Octu and when he came onto Crate. Hair was different, his beard was darker, he looked a little slimmer, he had his lightsaber that was just destroyed in the previous scene, all those things. And but all in all, this was a beautiful thing. And another theme of, once again, I mentioned the theme of failure, the Yoda scene that this had, with the talking about masters fail. Yoda said, you pass on what you learn. Yeah, your strengths, but also your weaknesses, your failures. He said of course, in Yoda talk, the greatest teacher failure is. And that is a huge theme in this, like I said, in this movie here. So once again, you look back in homages. Obi-Wan failed Anakin, right? He failed Anakin, and Anakin became Darth Vader. Yoda failed Luke in Episode 5 because he did go to Dagobah and he confronted Vader too early, and the rebellion at that point lost. Episode 5, everyone, the rebellion lost there, right? So the Empire won that movie there, and then Luke failed Kylo. So all those all work together there. So I'll tell you what, if your perspective was that with Luke, then you're gonna get the movie, and you're gonna get all these themes and how beautiful this was for the ending of Luke Skywalker, which is not the ending. Once again, you will see him in Episode 9. He becomes stronger. He becomes one with the Force Ghost. He's probably going to haunt Kylo, because Kylo did strike him in anger, and then of course still help Rey and teach Rey along the way. So kind of with that, let's kind of stick to Luke and Rey. All right, let's talk about Luke and Rey. I thought Rey was, again, fantastic in this movie. So Luke did teach Rey, as he does, take her under his wing for three lessons, and he only gives her two. But Rey does find out her third lesson by herself, kind of much like Luke did in Episode 5. So lesson 1 was the Force is energy between all things. It's the balance that binds us all together, and it's inside everyone. And even Rey says that, it's inside me. And there's a joke there. We'll catch the comedy a little bit later. I'll talk about comedy in a whole different section here. But the lesson 1 is that the Force does not belong to the Jedi. Right, it's in everybody, and that's really the lesson. And it's in all things. There's a balance. There's a binding of everything together, and that's where Luke's wisdom has now taken him to the ability to probably go Force Ghost, which of course we see that at the end. But in his mind, his wisdom has got him there until he actually makes that full sacrifice. And I forgot to say, he makes a sacrifice. He does die because he uses so much power to do that Force projection that Luke does. So lesson 2 was the legacy and failure. Lesson 2 was failure, and Luke says the legacy of the Jedi is failure. He mentions Dark Sidious for the first time, and doesn't say the Emperor, right? So Dark Sidious came to power and destroyed everything, and the Jedi failed, and because of hubris, because of the pride of the Jedi, and the legend, excuse me, the legend of Luke Skywalker. I failed because, and then he started talking about how he failed Kylo Ren. He says, I failed because I was the legend, and my hubris said I can take on these new individuals and take on Han and Leia's son, but he ultimately failed, and that's why he's in this hermit mode and hiding in regret. And not only did he fail, of course we find out later on that he actually turned in a split second into the dark side, that he was going to murder his nephew. So pride is what blinds you. So we learn that the second lesson is legacy, being a legend, and hubris, and too much self-confidence and pride is that lesson 2. Alright, so the third lesson, once again, Luke didn't teach this one, is when actually Rey goes into the cave, and we think that we find out Rey's parent and the lineage, but we don't. It was a really cool scene. It's definitely Rian Johnson's scene of the multiple Reys in when she goes into that that little black hole that sucks her in. She goes into the water, then jumps out into this kind of cave, like I said, reminiscent of Episode 5, with Luke's training, and she's like half a second um, in time with all these rays, and she goes all the way to the end, and she says, "Show me my parents. I want to know who my parents is." And you see some silhouettes come up. You're like, "Oh my goodness, we're going to see Rey's parents, and it's not gonna go how the way you think it's gonna go, because it just shows her own reflection." So she has a Disney moment here of I guess no, it's not a Disney. It's not a Disney movie. Kung Fu Panda is not a Disney movie, correct? But she has a Kung Fu Panda moment. It's not you. It doesn't mean nothing else matters. It's you. So I think that's what her third lesson is. It's don't worry about who your parents are, things of that nature. It's you. You have to look into yourself and find the way. So I think with that third lesson learned, she goes, well, and she then talks to Kylo Ren, and this is a good kind of switch into the whole Kylo Ren discussion. She has a connection with Kylo Ren through the first and second act of this movie, and it's really greatly done too. And in this part, in lesson 3, she's actually talking to Kylo Ren, and says, I thought I was gonna find out my parentage, things of that nature, but I didn't get anything. But she learned that it's gonna be, she has to take it upon herself. So Luke comes in, and you see Luke's power. And Luke's power, you finally see a glimpse of that, because Luke finally kind of gives in, and I forgot to mention that we found out in this movie that Luke shut himself off from the Force. That's why no one can sense him, no one could have found him, because he turned himself off from the Force. But he does reapply himself, and he senses Leia, and Leia's hurt, and he goes, I gotta go help my sister. And but then when he comes back to find Rey, and he kind of sees a glimpse of Kylo kind of connected, wow, his power erupts, and he just destroys that whole little hut there. And you see a first glimpse of how powerful Luke Skywalker actually is. But then Rey finds out that once again, there's 3 stories to this, right? It's not going to go how the way it's going to go. It's 3 stories to the explanation of the whole Kylo Ren and Luke relationship, of what happened in that night that that Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. In this part, Rey, fights Luke, and Luke wasn't really fighting. He was just kind of deflecting. And Rey ends up saying, "Tell me the real story." And the real story is Luke had a glimpse of the dark side, and for a split second thought he was going to need to murder his nephew, because he looked into his mind in Kylo Ren, and he saw just pure evil. And that was basically the beginning of Ben Solo's rage and his path to Kylo Ren. So Rey then takes it upon herself, and then goes on to her mission of saying, if you're not going to be the one who takes care of this and can bring Ben Solo back from the dark side, then I'm going to do it. And she goes off, and we'll talk about Rey and her amazing team up for a little bit with Kylo Ren in a bit. But let's go ahead and go back to Kylo Ren, and how the development of this character was so amazing. So let's go back to the themes of this movie, and that's pride, failure, sacrifice, and spark. And if you think about pride, his arrogance, his pride is very, very much so of that Darth Vader, of that Anakin Skywalker, that Skywalker blood in him, wanting to be that next Darth Vader. But he fails. He fails to defeat Rey and bring Rey, and he gets smacked down by Snoke. And that was actually, and we'll talk about Snoke in a second, but that was really great. And he rages, and you see his rage when he destroys that helmet. Take that ridiculous helmet off, and he destroys it. And his lesson learned was, hey, you know what? I don't know if I'm into this Snoke guy anymore, because he gave everything to the dark side, but this is not enough. So he makes the most incredible sacrifice in destroying his master. And that's where really the dark side is complete. That's right there was it. And Rey thought that she was going to turn him to the light side. And once again, we thought for a split second he becomes good, right, when they both team up there. But it's not going to go how the way it's going to go. And he actually says, you know what? It actually, when he killed Snoke, it sparks the dark side in him. It says, "Join me to rule this world." And Rey's like, "No." And Kylo Ren is the real villain. Snoke was a side villain, and I know it was a disappointment for a lot of individuals. But I'm gonna really spark this conversation here is killing off heroes in Star Wars and killing off sub-villains in Star Wars is a thing. It's happened almost in every single movie. And I'm gonna quickly go through this real quick, and because a lot of people are upset about Snoke dying with just a few scenes, and we don't get his backstory and stuff like that. I thought it was great. But and a lot of people are upset about Luke dying. But let's go do this real quick. And I made a list here. Killing off heroes is is a Star Wars thing. Episode 4. All right, we're gonna go kind of chronologically in when it comes out, when the movies came out. Episode 4, Obi-Wan dies. The whole stinking planet of Alderaan dies. All right, so Bail Organa, in a sense, dies there. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. So these are let's say heroes, but Owen, Aunt Beru isn't heroes. They're more of a plot device there. But Obi-Wan dies in that, right? And that was an issue there. Episode 5, no main character really died, but the Rebels lose. Rebels lose in Episode 5. In Episode 6, Yoda dies. Right? Episode 1, Qui-Gon dies. Episode 2, Anakin's mom dies, and in a sense, in Episode 2, you see the downfall of Anakin. There's no major character that dies on that one, a hero that is. Episode 3, I was kind of going over all the heroes that died. All the heroes died, pretty much, on that, probably except for Yoda and Obi-Wan, right? Padme dies. Mace Windu dies. Order 66, basically all the Jedi dies. Younglings, everything. So, Rogue One, everyone dies. I just put down everyone. Everyone dies in Rogue One. Episode 7, Force Awakens, Lord Sintaka dies right away. And then, of course, Han dies. So killing off heroes is a Star Wars thing. So Luke dying should not be a surprise to a lot of individuals. And how he died, like I mentioned before, was a beautiful thing. Now, for the death of Snoke, and I'm just going to throw this in right quick because she wasn't really a major character again, is Phasma. Phasma was another throwaway. But, once again, killing off sub-villains is a Star Wars thing. Alright, Episode 4. Right, Tarkin dies in Episode 4. Greedo dies, which is kind of like a villain there on there. So, Episode 5, really no villains died. Villains won on that one. I just put down the Yeti. The Yeti dies. I would like to see a little bit more of the Yeti. So, Episode 6, Jabba dies. Boba Fett just gets thrown away. He dies. And one of everyone's favorites, Salacious B. Crumb, dies in Episode 6, right? So, sub-villains. People that we kind of go, whoa, we wanted more from that character. Like Boba Fett, we wanted more from Boba Fett, but he's gone. But Boba Fett became a legend in the Star Wars universe, right? Episode 1, Darth Maul dies, right? Sub-villain. Episode 2, Jango Fett dies. Episode 3, Count Dooku, which was just wrecked Obi-Wan and Anakin, right? He dies in Episode 3. General Grievous just dies in Episode 3. Rogue One, I just put again, everyone dies in Episode in Rogue One. And then Episode 7, no one actually, there's no sub-villain that actually died in Episode 7. So all that stuff there, that list that I'm making there, it's a Star Wars thing. So Snoke dying, it's not a huge thing. I thought it was great how it basically turns Kylo into the ultimate villain, and we for a moment, all the artists for a moment said, oh, he turned good. Rey did it, but no, it's a learning lesson. It's a disappointment. It sparked the dark side. It was failure on Rey's part, right? Because of her pride, her hubris, thinking that she touched Kylo Ren, but it was all a Snoke plot there, right? And yeah, so it was interesting enough there. So the Luke and Kylo ending of that fight there, and where a lot of people just did not see the fact, and I didn't see it, that it was an astral projection. It was a projection. It was a force projection, not astral projection, but it's a force projection from Luke, and that key line at the end. Before Luke disappears and in a sense dies and joins the Force, but his last line and his last words to Luke, or to Kylo, sorry, the last words that Luke said to Kylo was a Han Solo line, right? See you around, kid. That was great. If you are a Star Wars fan, you would have gotten that and you would have said that was perfect. So homage to Han, see you around, kid. That's what basically Han says to Luke. So the Kylo Ren storyline and arc and the growth here was amazing. His rage was so good. And once again, I'm jumping around here, right? So point all the weapons into that man and fire, and yeah. So really, really great parts for there. So Rey and Kylo, the chemistry was awesome. Like I said, the back and forth was great, and Snoke plants that trap to connecting Kylo and Rey, but it is again the theme of pride, Snoke's pride, his hubris, and it ends up as failure, right? Because his apprentice kills him at the end there. So, and let's kind of finish off with Kylo, Rey, and Luke here. Well, just really with Rey, is Rey's parentage. This was everybody's question, right, after The Force Awakens, was who's Rey's parents? She's a Skywalker. She's a Skywalker. For sure, she's a Skywalker. Well, no. Rey's parents is a nobody. This movie kind of talked about really the I would say the Disney's. This is definitely a Disney movie. It's Ratatouille. Everybody can cook. Well, everybody has. The Force is connected to everybody, but some just have more connection to the Force. And Rey has a lot of connection to the Force. Anakin was a nobody when he started, right? But he had a connection with the Force. So, however, right? We find out Rey's parents is nobodies, just junk dealers in Jakku, and they left her, right? And sold her off. However, I think this could be not the truth. Could be something more to it, because Kylo's the one who tells her this, and she says, you feel it, you see it, but I don't know if she does or not. So there might be a slight opening, if did Kylo Ren tell the truth that Rey's parents are nobodies. We will see in episode 9. So that's kind of the end there. So let's kind of finish out and this really the whole point of all this discussion was really the highs of the movie, and I really loved Luke's story arc, Rey's story arc, and Kylo Ren's story arc, and even Snoke when he dies quickly, but I still enjoyed it on there. So what else there to write down here? Let's talk about Porgs and Chewie. I wish we had more Chewbacca. I bet you they did a lot of more scenes with him, but when he came in and busted that door down and talked to Luke, and Luke was like, "Where's Han?" It's a great scene. The whole Porg situation with Chewie, that was great. So Chewie was present. We wish we had more of Chewbacca. And the Porgs were fine. They're an infestation in Octu, but it's gonna sell a ton of toys. And hey, you know what? This Disney is still a business. I didn't mind the Porgs at all. I thought the Porgs were fine on there. So I also wrote down here. We talked about Poe in the beginning, but Poe's at the end of the movie, historic arc ends with him becoming that leader, not retreating at the end, telling people to retreat, which he would normally have not have done. So he did some growth there, and we can probably call him General Poe Dameron in episode 9. I'm pretty sure of that. So Poe was great on there. We already talked about Snoke. Let's talk about Leia. Uh, Princess General Leia was a beast in this movie. She was fantastic, and a lot of people are having problems with her uh, crazy ability to save herself from dying. And I'll tell you what, I thought she died when the whole space battle happened with Leia on the bridge and Kylo was gonna shoot, and Kylo said, "Well, I'm not gonna shoot her," and then the other blasters came in, or other ships came in and blew the bridge up, right? And she got sucked out in space. I go, and this was in the first act. I was like, "Oh my God, they're gonna kill off Princess Leia right away." I'm gonna say it again. This is not how you think it's gonna go, right? So she has the force power, and she is the boss. She was able to use her force to protect herself and to bring her back from edge of space. We know, of course, her Skywalker blood and the legend of Leia grew there, and so maybe some hubris there, some pride there in her abilities that she really keeps on her wraps. Was great, and I think, of course, if Carrie Fisher did not die, she would have had an amazing part of showing her abilities in Episode 9. But I think, of course, things are going to change because of her death, and she was going to be the boss. She was going to be incredible in Episode 9 and have her sunset in Episode 9. But I think we'll probably just start with the funeral in Episode 9 to begin the movie. Probably some explanation, maybe some time has passed for Leia there. But I thought Leia's part was incredible. I had no problem with the force of bringing her back in there. I thought it was great because it showed her amazing ability, and this movie showed some more depth and stretch of the force, because the force is crazy. There's so many abilities that you can do, and I think fanatics, or some fanatics are taking it way too seriously, because this was a lot of growth in Star Wars here. So my favorite Leia moment was actually when Luke, his force projection, came and had that moment with Leia, giving her the dice of Han. And my favorite piece of all that was when Luke kisses Leia on the head and the lights shining there. It was just a great homage. Whoever edited that piece was incredible. So. To kind of finish everything else off here is I just wrote down here, forget Death Star technology, let's just use light speed cruisers as bullets. That scene where Vice Admiral Holdo goes light speed into the Star Destroyer, the ship of Snoke, was incredible. The sound effect, which was zero sound effect, the silence in that piece was incredible. I think everybody in the theater when I was watching it was like, you could hear a pin drop, like what the, and the visual of that was incredible. So I said, forget the Death Star technologies, go light speed cruiser bullets. Let's just shoot those everywhere and destroy stuff. The crate battle was amazing. The salt on there, that whole ending, that third act was just a 10 out of a 10. So it was crazy on there. So let's finish off with comedy. It's subjective, of course. Comedy is subjective. I liked it, but people are taking these movies really way too seriously. In the beginning of the movie, they laid out the themes, and comedy was a part of it. So I'm just gonna go through some of the jokes that I liked, right, and the major jokes, because there's a lot of little ones in there, and the ones that actually landed. And actually, this is gonna transition into some of the jokes I don't like, and it's gonna go into the lows and the cons of this movie on here. So. Let's kind of go here. I was supposed to go on to this scene when I was talking about everyone else. So talked about Leia, we'll talk about Finn and Rose in a bit. Talk about Chewbacca, talked about Phasma. Phasma wasn't even pretty much there. So let's talk about the comedy real quick. So once again, the whole Poe Verizon's "Huh, can you hear me now?" I thought it was fine, no problem there. A lot of people had a problem with this. Luke throws the lightsaber. I had no problem with it because at his moment of time, he doesn't want to do he doesn't want to see anybody. He does not want to be a part of the resistance, a part of the. He's already shut himself away from the Force, right? He doesn't need a lightsaber. He's like, get out of here, and he just goes into his hut. It's like, he doesn't even care who the person is, right? She just get out of here. I don't even talk to you. So that's fine for me. I had no issues with that at all. And of course, Rey finds the lightsaber afterwards. Anyway, so a comedy piece of this was actually Luke's daily routine with the whole milk thing. His face was when drinking that milk was great. I thought that was hilarious there. Rose tasers Finn. That was a great comedic moment there. I laughed there. The poor guilt. With here's the thing though. The pork already died. He was already barbecued. Chewie should just ate it. So that was a waste of some good pork meat there. But the poor guilt was hilarious. The caretakers of Octu was great. There was only two jokes on the whole why those caretakers hate Rey. So I thought it was great on that. One of my favorite comedic parts was when Rey was training with Luke, and she says, "Yeah, I feel the Force," and Luke is tickling her with the little leaf there, and I thought that was great there. That great piece. I bet you it took him a few takes to get that right, because you can still see Daisy Ridley kind of smile and kind of crack up there because it was so funny. So I feel the Force. Yoda dances. I love Puppet Yoda. So Puppet Yoda was amazing. Leia said, "I changed my hair." I thought that was a great moment. And then toward the end of the movie here, Luke winks at C-3PO, and I thought that was great. So let's go into the cons. Some of the things I didn't like about this movie. I already went through a big portion of what I liked about this movie, but what I didn't like about this movie is short, but still some issues here, was some of the comedy. C-3PO was just put in there. There was no rhyme or reason why C-3PO was in there. It was a shame. C-3PO is now a lost character in episode 7 and episode 8 here. So unfortunately, C-3PO was the comic relief, but he was not very good in this movie. So the put a shirt on scene, that was kind of unnecessary for Kylo Ren to be all shirtless and sweaty, and Rey's like, put on a shirt kind of scenario. I don't know. That was kind of not needed. So the whole BB-8 drunk gambler coin, and then it comes back as the payoff of him having a bunch of coins and shooting it as like a gun, was unnecessary. So it was a forced R2 hero scene, right? Because R2 would do something of that nature, but she would do it in my opinion a much better way. I actually liked the fact that BB-8 was in the AT-AT or the AT-SS or whatever, the new AT-ATs, and was shooting and saved. That was fine. That was hey, BB-8 saving the day like R2 does. But the whole coin thing was goofy. We'll get into the whole Canto bite in a bit. So the Rose kiss at the end, with the whole Rose and Finn Titanic moment, that wasn't, because it was just an interesting piece there, and it's kind of supposed to be a little bit funny there, but hey, I saved you kind of scenario, but it didn't really land there. Let's talk about some of the other things I didn't like. Maz Kanata, what the heck? Exposition for Maz Kanata? That was it. We had 20 seconds with her in a Union battle, and that was it. She was a very, very great character in Force Awakens, and then all of a sudden she's just this throwaway. I bet you she had a extra piece in this movie, but maybe they changed it, but it wasn't as good as it could have just left Maz out of it, right? It really didn't even need Maz. Maz was just there just to be there for 30 seconds. So Lupita Nyong'o just got a paycheck for it. So Admiral Akbar, yeah, one of the most iconic characters dies, and we didn't even we got some acknowledgement, but I thought he deserved a lot more there. So, and yes, I already said that heroes die, but hey, you know what? He deserved more. Um, it's a Star Wars thing. Heroes die, right? But come on, it's Admiral Akbar. No Snoke backstory was a con. They could have added something in there. It was already a 2.5 hour movie, but they could have added 30 seconds of a little bit of backstory. But I think, maybe they're gonna, do it in episode 9 or something of that nature, on there. One of the things that bothered me the most, even after the second time seeing it, was there really wasn't any reasoning behind Vice Admiral Holdo not telling anybody about the plan, and really not even telling Poe about the plan. Maybe she told other people, other officers, but not Poe. So, and that kind of was the biggest issue with that storyline there. So, and then finally, I don't think anyone really enjoyed the Canto Bight, the red herring of the Master Codebreaker, and then the introduction of DJ, and this whole thing where it failed. This was another failure piece in the movie, right? This was another theme of failure, and Finn's pride of, hey, I can save this, and Poe's pride of all this, and it was rushed. And I bet you that they had a lot more on of this whole backstory here with the Canto Bight and the Master Codebreaker and all that, but they had to make cuts, and they made cuts here, and because it was very rushed and disjointed, and the payoff was just not worth it. There wasn't really a payoff. It was a whole disappointment, which is a part of the theme. Failure is a disappointment on there, and there was lesson learned here, right? Poe did learn that they failed, and hey, I might have screwed up the resistance here. So, but Benicio del Toro was a throwaway character. DJ was really anything there. He was more of a political explanation piece where, hey, these people, there's both sides that buy from these individuals, or the best thing to do is not to join, right? So yeah, I don't think anyone really enjoyed this piece of it. This was the bathroom break period. So it was a 2.5 hour movie, so bathroom break period for all this. So so this, if this story arc was a lot better, this probably would have been even a perfect movie. But this was the flaw, in my opinion, in this whole movie here. So we're gonna finally end this video here. This video is getting close to an hour here. We're at about 48 minutes here. So once again, I love this movie. It's a great flick. If you are a Star Wars fan, go watch it. But go watch it. Well, you guys have probably all seen it, right? If you guys are watching the spoiler video, you've seen it. But if you guys watch it again, how about that? If you guys watch it again, just remember the themes: pride, hubris, failure, and disappointment. Sacrifice, spark, lessons learned, right? The people that got a lot of lessons learned here. Poe got some learning. Finn learned that you can't just sacrifice yourself, right? Rose saved him. Rey learned a lot, right? She's gonna be the new thing of Jedis. Kylo learned a lot. Even Snoke learned that he died though. So, and of course Luke and his biggest teachings from Yoda, teaching him again about being a master and passing down failure, and now joining the Force, being one with the Force, so being a Force ghost. And the comedy involved here. So just know that if you see it again, and I think if you were disappointed the first time, see it again with these different lenses on. So this really now ends with the rebellion, with the resistance spark. The Jedi does not end here. The Jedi doesn't own the Force, but the Jedi doesn't end here. I'm not the last Jedi. Everything that you said is incorrect, Kylo Ren. And there are others. So we pan to the kids in Canto Bight, and that one kid that had the resistance ring on, the rebellion symbol on there, has Force powers, and he's standing there with his broom, like a lightsaber, and that's gonna open up, I think, just a whole new world and a whole new story for episode 9, and leaving it wide open. There's going to be so many different ways that they can go. So J.J. Abrams now has a really open road to how to end this trilogy here of the Rey Kylo story, and really it's the Kylo story. All right, because once again, the episodes are a Skywalker saga, Skywalker tale. Right, Luke is now dead, but the two Skywalkers left is Leia, but she's probably going to end up, passing away early in the movie, leaving Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, Skywalker, heir Skywalker, and that's it. Unless we find out that that Rey is somehow a Skywalker, I don't know. So I don't think so on there. So I once again think it's a great movie. Does have a few lows, but the highs, there's too many highs to say that this is a bad movie. It sucks. Once again, there's probably some troll videos and reviews. I just go, you guys are crazy. This was an incredible movie that did what it's supposed to do, and that one line, it's not going to go how the way you think it's going to go, and it keeps on doing that. A lot of OMG moments. What do you guys think? If you guys are Star Wars fans, if you guys, of course, new to my channel, of course, like, subscribe, and comment below. Love to have a discussion with you guys if you guys have seen Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and I should, of course, assume that since you guys seen this spoiler review here. So, but anyway, thank you guys for watching. Catch you guys next time. Later.